Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to do a informative video. It's going to be, my suggestions for RiftRaids, my suggestions for like characters to farm, and yeah, I wanted to highlight some of the best characters for RiftRaids really. Very briefly, I'll give you my feedback on the game mode. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. It's basically what we need in the game. It gives us loads of challenge. It was really fun. There's lots of teamwork and coordination with your club, which didn't exist before that really. It's what the game needed. Now I do have a couple of things I want to say. So I obviously still think the monetization is off. I think it was very expensive, right? You're spending orbs, quite a lot of orbs on refreshes and getting 2 battles from it, and that wasn't enough for me, and that's feedback I left for Kabam. That's also feedback I shared in the playtest. As a game mode itself, I really enjoyed it. I will touch on the rewards. Being a start game, we came 3rd overall, which was a really good achievement for us. So we got the best rewards. And initially when that happened, I was super excited about it. I was really happy, and I still am, don't get me wrong. I did then see the rewards for people in the rest of Star. I was seeing that rank 21 was getting worse than rank 101. So they need to sort that out, like 100%. That needs to be fixed to make the rewards fair at least. I know they talked about making them fair in milestones, but there is a huge disparity between the divisions at the minute, which needs to be fixed. Anyway, let's jump into the characters. So I'm going to be doing a couple from each class, and we're going to be starting with tanks. Okay, so the first tank on everyone's list to farm is going to be Oogie Boogie. Now, Oogie Boogie was so important for some of these nodes. He was so important for the villainous node. You basically had to have him in order to be able to do it later on, and he's just a great tank. So yeah, he basically became a mandatory slot later on, and the fact he's so good, he's one you want to farm. Okay, next up we have got Mr. Incredible. Now, Mr. Incredible was necessary for the leader tower, I'd say, as your tank, and also he was pretty good against the gatekeeper. You're going to need a tall leader later on. Now, for the beta players, they had Jack Skellington, but in my opinion, for everyone else, it was probably best to go with Mr. Incredible here. So he's one you want to farm up, and he's definitely one to use against that leader sentinel. By the way, I might accidentally say tower instead of sentinel throughout this, so I do apologize. Right, moving on. The next tank I would say is really invaluable is Simba. Simba for me was just so important. Like, I used him in that royalty sentinel. I used him against Snow White, and he was just invaluable for kind of keeping my team alive with the armor. Like, Snow White gets ridiculously strong like later on in the rift tiers, and her thorns do so much damage. So the fact that you can lure and go indestructible with Simba and then get both Snow White and Anna hitting him, I just found that kind of invaluable for me really. So and obviously he's got goofball traits, so you can use against Oogie. And then after that, we've got this man here, Wally. Now, for the first couple of tiers, until restrictions get really awful, you can use him against Scrooge as like a tech tank, but later on you're not going to be able to use him there. However, you can still use him against Oogie, as he's got that goofball tank role, and I would suggest using him, to be honest. He's best tank in the game, so yeah, I highly recommend getting your Wally up to a reasonable level. He will help your club a lot. And now we've got the supports. So the first one is going to be kind of an obvious one for me, and it's going to be Mickey. I do apologize if you don't have Mickey, but he's going to be your leader support for Gaston. He is just the best support role for that Sentinel. So Farm with Mickey, I apologize if you don't have him because he is quite exclusive. A lot of these characters are exclusive, I understand that. But I have to point out the best characters in the game and the best characters for progression. So then I'm going to put one here that I really enjoyed using. Now, I use Tiana loads. I use Tiana in the Royalty Tower. I actually used it over Evil Queen. And the main reason was because of her knockback. So Simba would take an absolute battering from Snow White and Anna, and then I'd be able to get Tiana to throw up that potion, do a knockback around him just after he'd come out of his indestructible, because he's obviously been luring everyone. She'd heal him up, she'd also burn the characters, and she'd cleanse him because Anna's laying down debuffs and stuff like that as well. So I found Tiana super valuable. But I'll also say there is another option, arguably a better option than Tiana, which is going to be Evil Queen. Now, Evil Queen can be used against multiple Sentinels, so she can be used in that villainous one against Maleficent, and also she can be used, in that Royalty Sentinel with Snow White instead of Tiana as your healer. Now, the amazing thing about Evil Queen is she poisons, and she's going to be a Royalty medium, which you're going to need to slot in against the Gatekeeper. At the end of this, by the way, I'm going to show you like a little Excel sheet I made with the restrictions, just kind of help you understand what it got like at least to tier 21, which is where we made it to. I can't speak for the tiers after that because obviously we can get that far, but these are going to be the restrictions, so you're going to have to abide by them, okay? Anyway, Evil Queen, a very awesome support role, massive heal, does loads of poison damage, and yeah, for me, kind of I'd say almost a must farm. I have Tiana, so I did prefer using her, but yeah, she's definitely got a little bit more usability than Tiana does. Okay, next up, I don't have him, but I'm going to explain why he's so important. Jack Skellington, he's going to be the man, he's going to be the best for Snow White, that Royalty Sentinel. He's actually going to trump Tiana and Evil Queen. However, he's not in the game yet, so, I have to give you the other options, but he would kind of slot into that role over them, I'd say. And then he's also a leader and tall, so he can actually slot in against the Gatekeeper, which I would say is probably going to be one of the best teams against the Gatekeeper. It's going to be him and then two other characters that I'll get to. He can also be used against the Oogie Boogie Sentinel. Okay, hero. Now we've got our tech supports. He is basically the only support that you can use later on against Scrooge. So he's very kind of valuable there. And hero is just a really great character in general. Got really kind of weak healing, but kind of makes up for that with his ability to kind of buff all the characters around him. So he's one you're going to be wanting to farm specifically, for Scrooge. Now we've got our ranged class. Now I don't like this class, remember, but I can't stress enough how important ranged is actually for RiftRaids. I actually tip my hat to Kabam here. For me, they felt like a class that it felt very lackluster in this game. However, Kabam made them so important in RiftRaids because of mandatory restrictions. There were a lot of Sentinels that needed a specific range type Guardian. And then also they put a timer of 3 minutes on these battles, and it made me really value how important range are as a class, because they can get through battles quickly, because they seem to have like the higher sort of damage output with this super high kind of focus and crit damage that they do. Anyway, long story short, there's going to be quite a few decent range that you can farm up, and I'm going to mention some honorable mentions at the end as well. But anyway, Maleficent, she can be used in so many different places. She can be used against Gaston as a leader range. She can also be used against the Gatekeeper. She can be used against Oogie, and then lastly she can be used against herself as well. So there's so much usability for Maleficent, and I have to tip my hat off and say that she is pretty useful in these raids. And we did have some club mates do really, really well with her, and you know, actually clear some really, really tough sentinels with Maleficent. So next up we have this man here. Now I imagine a lot of people got a lot of use out of this guy. Yeah, he's got so much use in RiftRaids. He can be used against Maleficent, the Maleficent Sentinel. He can be used against Oogie Sentinel, and he can be used against the Tech Sentinel. He's the best ranged, Scrooge. He's the best ranged in the game. A must farm, even if you've got him like 4 stars or just unlocked him, get this guy up. He's gonna give you a lot of mileage. Just so good, just so good. He's also very good against the Gatekeeper earlier on because he gets him down so fast, and with that timer, you know, that 3-minute timer, he just makes it pretty much a breeze. I will say this though, the further on you get, the restrictions get tighter and you can't use Zerg against the Gatekeeper, but he is still phenomenal. He's got so much use against Sentinels, and you know, he's the best range of the game, so 100%. Eve. Yes, Eve. Now, I'm gonna plead the case for Eve now. You get to a point where you're fighting the Gatekeeper, and the Gatekeeper becomes very restricted, and you need a character that is both short and short fused. So there's only 5 in the game. There's Anger, Stitch, Eve, Tink, and Donald. Now, in my opinion, I think Eve is probably one of the best out of this bunch. There's merits to the others, and one of them is on this list as well. But I'd say Eve, she probably edges it for me for a couple of reasons. Number one, she's ranged. Now, the Gatekeeper is very slow, and she can keep a distance and shoot him from distance, never really getting in harm's way. Unfortunately, characters like Tink, which is the other, you know, short fuse range, she stands in the pool, which is really dumb. Eve is also immune to the wound, I believe, so she's not going to get hurt by the pool anyway. So yeah, I'd say Eve is super valuable later on. And also, she does have some sentinel use. I think she can be used in that against that Tech Sentinel. Now, don't get me wrong, she's mainly here because of that specific requirement for the Gatekeeper. The Gatekeeper is never going to change, guys. The Sentinels might change in RiftRaids, but the Gatekeeper is always going to stay the same. So you're going to need to pick a short and short fuse character to farm up. And in my opinion, it's going to be Eve or another one we'll get to. Okay? So yeah, Eve, a lot of shock damage, you know, does a decent amount of damage and can get the job done. And even later on, like, you can be chipping away at the Gatekeeper's kind of health with her, you know, not in danger of dying because she keeps the distance, okay? Alright guys, now moving on, we've got the melees, and yes, it's Aerial. I know a lot of people get frustrated by the need to use Aerial all the time. Yeah, she's just the most usable melee in this whole game mode, right? And to be honest with you, you could probably do without, you know, you could probably get away without using melees and a lot of sentinels. And there's not that many on my list here. There's gonna be a couple of honorable mentions, but Aerial, she's gonna be the most useful against Snow White, I'd say. You can use others here, don't get me wrong. You can use Sky, you can use, you know, Anna. But Aerial for me just gets the job done. She's just very durable. Got a big knockback. She can cleanse herself, so she can kind of cleanse any damage that gets put on her by, you know, Anna and Snow White, the damage over times. And I just found her extremely useful and got so much mileage out of her. Now, the other melee that I was going to recommend, this one's going to be a surprising one, is going to be Anger. Now, Anger is also short and short fused, so he gives you another option of a melee kind of going up against the Gatekeeper. The thing is with Anger is he gets like he's got stackable buffs, They're based on the number of enemies on the field. Now the gatekeeper constantly spawns these little elementals, and it just builds up his stacks. So eventually gets to a point where he's doing so much damage. Now what we want to do with anger is not actually set off his special, because then he kind of explodes and uses his buffs in that explosion. With anger, you're just going to kind of use that basic and keep stacking them. So he's one character that I'd say is another one to maybe put on your list of farms. Now I'm also going to give you some honorable mentions. There's going to be a couple of melees in there, but these are only 2 melees that I've got on my list, because as I said, it really is about ranged, as a class kind of shining in this game mode because of the fact that the sentinels are so restricted and you've got this time limit that you need to get through. Now, first honorable mention is going to be Minnie. Earlier on in the Rift tiers, you're going to be able to pair her with Wally against Scrooge, and that is just the best pairing because she's going to get so much armor. So Minnie is fantastic until the restrictions get a little bit too steep, and without Wally, she just kind of melts really, and it's a much harder battle against Scrooge eventually. Now Scrooge, eventually you can't use him at all, but I will say this: earlier on, he's very, very solid about getting down sentinels and the gatekeeper because of the focus buffs that he gives out on his special. So he's another one. Buzz, another fantastic leader tech character, but you can slot in. He probably should be on my list, to be honest, but yeah, Buzz does a lot of damage and has a lot of usability, so yeah, one to definitely consider taking up. Elsa is another character that has some decent mileage in RiftRaids. She can be used in a couple of the towers. Anna, now I don't use Anna because I've got a better aerial, but she's kind of made for this game mode, so I will say this, that if you've got a very strong Anna, you'll do very, very, very fine in this game mode. So yeah, Anna's another honorable mention. Violet, another one like Scrooge. She eventually just gets taken out by the restrictions, but early on she can give a lot of survivability to your team. I'm going to put this guy in here because my clubmate will kill me if I don't, but Stitch used Woody a lot, got a lot of mileage out of him in the leader tower kind of earlier on. Very, very kind of niche hybrid melee. I do think he kind of drops off a little bit later, but decent character. And then lastly, we got Sully, and we've also got Baymax. Both these tanks are, Sully actually has a lot of coverage of the map. He can be used against multiple sentinels. And Baymax, because he can actually be used against the gatekeeper, he's not going to get hurt by the pools, and you can also use him in the tech tower. And there we have it, guys. Those are my recommendations for RiftRaids, and here is the graphic that I wanted to share with you. It's not obviously a very nice looking graphic, it's just an Excel sheet, but these are all the traits and the restrictions. So let me just move my face. Yeah, so here we go. We've got the sentinels kind of, highlighted: Maleficent, Oogie, Snow White, Gaston, Scrooge, and then your gatekeeper. And you've got the 2 traits which are in the box for each one, which will become mandatory eventually, and then you've got the characters which you can use, in the highlighted blue. So take a screen grab. Hope it's helpful. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider giving me a thumbs up, like and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching.